I don't think he needs to do anything but what he's doing. I think Joe Biden is doing exactly what he needs to do to win re-election. I think the polling is taking place. Something that's amiss with the polling. I call your attention to the recent polls over in Maryland. The African-American woman running for the United States Senate nomination. The Sunday before the election, one poll had her 5 down, the other poll had her 7 down, and she won by 13. How do you explain that? That's 20 points.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what's going on with polling these days, but I do know this. The polls did not have Ossoff nor Warnock win in Georgia, and both of them won. Polls did not have Macbeth getting 80-something% in that district, but she did. Anybody who believes that Donald Trump will get 30% of the black male vote or 12% of the black female vote, I got a bridge down there on Johns Island, and I'll sell you.
Let's bring right Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina. He's the national co-chair for the Biden campaign. You know, Jim, that reminds me of two things. One is when a person running Trump's campaign back in 2020 tried to tell me he was going to get 20% of the black vote in 2020. I said, no, he isn't. Other thing it reminds me of, when I got elected, like at 30, 31, I had a lot of people coming in saying, okay, how did you win? And what do I need to do to win? And they start talking about these Republicans, these white Republicans start talking about how they're going to be the ones who are going to crack the code and they're going to get 30, 40% of the black vote. And before it came out of the mouth, they said, no, you're not. You're going to get 5%. And if you work really hard, you can get those numbers up. But the Trump people, the Trump people are doing it again. We're going to get 30%. Talk about how you hear this year in and year out, and it just never comes to fruition for Republicans.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, Joe. You know, I don't understand why these platitudes that get thrown out there by Trump and others, especially some of his sycophants, are these people who really carry a message that we all know where it emanates from. Why they seem to think that that's Bible, that is what is going to happen. The fact of the matter is, people know what their conditions are. They watch these candidates, they listen to their rhetoric. And when you say, I've done more for African Americans than any president since Abraham Lincoln, then you have one of your supporters out here saying that all of a sudden things are going good during Jim Crow, and LBJ comes along, Lyndon Johnson. And because of his programs, things got bad for the black family. What were his programs? Number one, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the 1968 Fair Housing Law, getting rid of redlining, keeping black families in slum condition. That is a problem. And you're telling me that your guy proposing that we get rid of these kinds of programs, and now healthcare. Remember, President Trump, big problem with John McCain was that he cast a deciding vote that made the Affordable Care Act continue to exist. Now, you're telling me that black families are going to reward him for that? I just saw Mr. Editor Tomasky's piece. And let me tell you something. I have been saying for weeks, even months now, to my friends that Joe Biden has a quiet constituency that nobody is looking at, nobody is listening to, but it's showing up in these polls. So I don't know what the people are saying to the pollsters, but I know what they say to me when I walk through airports. I just came in from San Diego. And I spent a lot of time in the Charlotte airport, in the last several days. And people are coming up to me very quietly saying, keep doing what you're doing. Things are going to be fine come November. I tell you, there's a quiet constituency that Joe Biden has, and it will show up big time come November.
Reverend Al's with us, and he has a question for you, Jim. Rev?
Congressman, happy Juneteenth Day. You before you went to Congress, you and your wife came out of the civil rights movement that really helped us to gain in your very young years the Voting Rights Act. And a lot of this race, I spoke last night in Miramar, Florida, a lot of this race is not about two older white men fighting in a retirement home about who's the best. It's not whose side we're on, but who's on our side. And I think that what you can outline to our viewers is the difference, the contrast in what Trump has stood for. I mean, we lost affirmative action under him. Voting rights has been hurt. And what Biden has been able to do. People don't vote for whose side they're on, it's who's on their side.
Yes, and let me tell you something. Two words that can sum up both sides of this issue. Joe Biden offers freedom to vote, freedom of reproductive rights, the kinds of freedom that people hold dear. The other side offer favor. You vote for me, and I will favor you in this way, that way, or the other. What are you going to do for my communities, for my family, for me personally? That is something that the other side has failed to put forth. So I'm telling you, this campaign is about freedom versus favor.
Representative Clyburn, this is Eddie Glaude. It's great to see you. Happy Juneteenth. Let me ask you a question. I agree with you that this idea that the Trump campaign is going to get 30% of the black vote doesn't make any sense, right? That these numbers that they're touting doesn't make any sense. But are you concerned about turnout? When I travel around the country and I'm talking with young people, there's not a lot of excitement out there. And so are you worried not so much about folk voting for Donald Trump, but folk not turning out in the numbers that produced a Warnock and an Ossoff, right? What about depressed black voter turnout? Are you worried about that?
Well, that's what the other side is all about. Yes, I am worried about that. The reason I'm worried about that, not because I don't think the interest is there and we are going to be able to turn people out based upon our platform. What I worry about, the misinformation, the disinformation, the stuff that's happening on social media that people repeat. And then the mainstream media, rather than report it as it is, tend to repeat it. It's one thing to report, it's something else to repeat. And you keep repeating this rather than explaining exactly what's happening, that could depress turnout. And the other side know that, and that's why they keep saying these ridiculous things, because they believe that if they get it repeated often enough by the mainstream media, people will be depressed, and then the vote will be suppressed.
All right. Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, always great to see you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. Happy Juneteenth.
All right. Happy Juneteenth. Meanwhile, he was in Detroit on Saturday touting all the things that he says his administration's done for the African-American community, including saying that unemployment rates were the lowest in history while he was president.
We've done more for, and I say this, I say it proudly, more for the black population than any president since Abraham Lincoln. That's a big statement. And crooked Joe Biden has done nothing for you except talk. It's only talk. The jobs were the best in the history of our country for African American, for black Americans. The jobs were the best in the history of our country.
He said he was the best president for black Americans since Abraham Lincoln. And then he said that's a big statement. It was a big statement. It was also a big lie. The Biden administration responded to with a post saying in part this, fact check. This is a blatant lie. Trump left office with the worst jobs record since the Great Depression. Did you hear that? The worst jobs record since the Great Depression, including presiding over record high black unemployment. President Biden has since presided over record low black unemployment and poverty rates. Steve Ratner, you're at the big wall. What has unemployment for black Americans looked like under both Joe Biden and Donald Trump?
Sure, Joe. So we'll take a look over here at the Southwest Wall at exactly that point. And what you can see here is the history of black unemployment versus white unemployment. And historically, as we all know, there was a big gap between black unemployment and white unemployment. If you go back to the 1980s, it was 12 percentage points, black unemployment well over 20%. And we did make a good bit of progress. And in fairness to Trump, we even made a bit of progress under his administration. But what the Biden administration is talking about is that when he left office, because of the pandemic, in fairness, black unemployment was something like 17%. And under Joe Biden, it has come down, 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 down. And it did hit a record low of about 6.5% during last year. It's up very slightly this year. But most importantly, the gap between black unemployment and white unemployment has hit a record low, and that is something that Donald Trump didn't come close to. There's only a 2.3 percentage point gap between the two. Obviously, we want to get that gap to zero, but we're getting closer. Part of why that's happened is because we have gotten more blacks into the workforce, particularly black women. So when you make some adjustments for demographics and things like that, you have almost the same percentage of black women employed today as you do of white women. So we've essentially eliminated that gap, which was as much as 8 percentage points back in the 1990s. We've made progress with black men. That's a little bit harder for a variety of reasons. We have a 5% gap at the moment, but that's well better than where we were, again, not that long ago when we were at 11 or 12%. So we've made a lot of progress on unemployment, and we still have a little bit of ways to go, but the news there is actually pretty good.
Well, it's really good when you look at the fact that employment equity is better than it's ever been. Let's go to the second chart, and let's look where black income does lag behind white income.
Yeah, Joe. So obviously, unemployment and income are two of the most important economic indicators, and there we have not made as much progress. You can see here just sort of what's been happening to wages, inflation-adjusted wages for various groups. And so white Americans today are making about $119,000 per household. Asian Americans are actually $141,000. But Hispanic Americans and black Americans are down in the $76,000 to $80,000 level. So their incomes have been going up, and this is after adjusting for inflation, but not nearly to the same level. And another way to look at that is down here, and this is the ratio between the two incomes, black and white. And so black incomes have been hovering around 65% of white incomes. It's been that way for a long time under a lot of presidents. We got to make real progress there. Hispanics are essentially in the same situation. Asians have done better.
And let's look at your third chart where the racial wealth gap remains large.
Yeah, the racial wealth gap is huge. You have white Americans with adjusted family incomes up here at around $280,000. You have black Americans down here. And so when you look at the ratio, you can see if you go all the way back to 1989, white Americans were at 18 times the wealth of black Americans. Black Americans had almost no wealth. We have, again, made some progress there. We got to a ratio of 6 times. It went up after the great financial crisis. It got worse for a bit, and we worked it back down to 6. But obviously 6 times is a crazy number for white people to have family incomes, family wealth of 6 times black people. So a lot of work to do there. So, and other economic indicators also show we still have a lot of work to do. If you look at percentages that own their own homes, whites 73%, blacks 46%, a delta of 27%. Retirement accounts, 61% of whites have retirement accounts, only 28% of black Americans. Own stocks, 66% versus 39% for black people. And, you know, education drives a lot of this. And so 42% of white Americans have a bachelor's degree or a higher education degree, and only 29% of black Americans have education. So today's Juneteenth, and I think it's an important day to look at both the enormous progress we've made in terms of getting black Americans into the workforce at almost the same level as whites. That's really great news, but we have a lot of work to do.
Great progress, but a long way to go. Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner, thank you so much. Let's talk, Jonathan, about the dust up yesterday about Donald Trump, who can't really seem to stop from kicking the most important city, the most important city in American politics over the next 6 months. That, of course, is the largest city in Wisconsin, which is seen as an ultimate swing state. Of course, he's now backtracking, but he was, according to the Chicago police, he was planning to stay in Chicago during the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. And his about face came after reporters found out that he was going to be staying in the Windy City instead of Milwaukee, when it reportedly involved Trump staying at a Trump Tower in the Windy City and commuting 90 miles north, all so he could stay out of Milwaukee overnight. Of course, Trump lied and told NBC that he had planned to stay in Milwaukee all along. But hours later, Chicago law enforcement confirmed that they were, in fact, planning security for a Trump stay during the RNC convention as recently as yesterday, and had been coordinating safety measures with both the Trump campaign in person and by phone. According to the chair of the city council's public safety committee, the Trump campaign abruptly changed their minds yesterday and communicated with the city to say, we're not coming to see the Cubs after all. Trump's been on the defensive, of course, about his views in Milwaukee after he told Republican lawmakers in a private meeting last week that the city was, quote, horrible. 1 week later, when he's in Wisconsin, he's saying that he, quote, loves Milwaukee. Jonathan Lemire, you think they could handle this a little bit better, but the guy just obviously has contempt for Milwaukee. Doesn't matter how much people spin it on Fox News, because I heard some people, even on Howie Kurtz's show, trying to spin that it was misinformation what was said about Milwaukee. Now, not if you take what Republicans were saying in the room, the fact they were going around in circles saying, oh, no, he didn't say it, and then they find out later that he admitted to saying it, and they go, oh, yeah. And it's just back and forth and back and forth. But obviously, he, like a lot of Republicans in Wisconsin, have a real problem with Milwaukee.
Yeah, Joe, first I did meteorology, now I'll do geography. Chicago, not in Wisconsin. Chicago,
not in Wisconsin.
Not in Wisconsin. Chicago in Illinois, a state that's going to safely go Democratic. Milwaukee, though, is the biggest city and arguably the biggest battleground state on the map in Wisconsin. And this is not new for Trump. Trump, back in 2016, the RNC was slated to was in Cleveland. He attacked Cleveland repeatedly, privately saying he didn't understand why the RNC would be there. He's doing the same here. And Trump is, a known creature of habit. He likes to sleep in his own bed each night. On campaign trail, he flies back and forth in order just to get back to Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, wherever it might be. And in this case, he was going to go to Trump Tower in Chicago, that hotel there. But Jen, this points to a bigger issue. I mean, the Biden campaign, their theory of the case all along has been once Trump was returned to the campaign trail, once the trial was over, Americans start tuning in over the summer and then more and more in the fall, that Trump's going to keep making self-destructive acts or comments. This feels like it could be one of them. And even if he alienates just a percentage of Wisconsin voters, maybe not Milwaukee residents, the city's probably not going to go for him, but maybe some suburban residents who have pride in Milwaukee or the Brewers or whatever it might be, it's a big unforced error.
Yeah, and or the Bucks, right?
Yeah,
like people like that. I wondered why he had. I mean, I did not realize that about Cleveland as well. That he would trash talk Cleveland in 2016. He doesn't. I mean, this is a thing, right? He wants to stay in Trump hotels, right? Like there's not a Trump hotel in Milwaukee, and that's why he wants to stay in Chicago. But also, I wonder if he doesn't want to be someplace where he loses. And if he's not loved in Milwaukee and he's not loved in Wisconsin, he's lost in Wisconsin before. If he doesn't want to go back there, and I do think, I know that some Republicans in Wisconsin don't love Milwaukee either, but it does seem to get at some kind of pride of the state when you're attacking their biggest city. And the more he's on, there was a lot of crazy stuff that he said when he was in Wisconsin last night. The more he's on the campaign trail, the more fodder there is for this kind of thing. But what do you take on how this?
Well, I think that I've noticed he's been very selective on the cities that he attacks. They usually have black mayors. They usually have a large urban community. And I had the mayor of Milwaukee on Politics Nation the other night, and we talked about that. There's, he never attacks certain cities who has some of the same challenges. But I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves. He has a sentencing 4 days before the convention, and who knows, the judge may have other accommodations prepared for him. I don't know. It's maybe unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out.
We shall see. Stay tuned on that front. But Eddie, I mean, the Rev really he broke the code, really. I mean, after Trump trashed Milwaukee, people were saying, oh, he would never say that. And then, okay, well, we found out he did say that. And they made a lot of different. It was about crime. It was about the Brewers' middle relievers. It was about this. It was about that. No, it wasn't. He trashed Milwaukee. But if you read the articles surrounding it, Republicans in Wisconsin have been trashing Milwaukee for a very long time. And it's all, as the Rev said, it's about cities with urban populations, with black mayors. Republicans have always talked that way about Philadelphia. Oh, they're going to just sit and wait and see how many black votes they can steal in Philadelphia because Philadelphia is so corrupt. Or Detroit, David Frum has a piece out about Donald Trump trashing Detroit. Again, it all comes down to, we heard what he said about Africa and about Caribbean nations. You might as well say it about cities, too, where there's a predominantly black population. Chances are very, very good that Donald Trump is not going to like that city.
Right, Joe. And then you add that to his conspiracy theory that these are the places that led to the election being stolen. Remember when he was talking about 2020, what was happening? It was what was going on in Atlanta, what was happening right in Milwaukee, what was happening in Detroit, what was happening in Philadelphia. So it makes it difficult for him to be in Milwaukee making the case, right, that the election was stolen in 2020, right, when in fact he's actually holding his convention in the very city that he thinks participated in the heist, as it were. So not only is it racist, Joe, it kind of cuts against the grain of the theory that he's been spouting ever since he lost the election.
Right now, Russian President Vladimir Putin's meeting with Kim Jong-un, and earlier today, the North Korean leader hosted Putin for a lavish welcome ceremony with portraits of both leaders strewn atop surrounding buildings throughout the nearby streets. Think Washington, D.C., in 2025 if Donald Trump wins. It's been 24 years since Putin visited the reclusive nation as his war on Ukraine stretches into another summer. North Korea's ability to arm Russia with weapons and artillery is critical for Putin's war aims. And as both leaders face escalating standoffs with the West, we're learning they signed a deal to help each other in case the other is attacked. Let's bring in Rogers Chair of American Presidency at Vanderbilt University, historian John Meacham. John, we really are seeing a shift here. There was a time not so long ago when Russia was largely dependent on Germany and other countries in the European Union to help fuel their economy. Obviously, China has been depending more and more on Europe and the West for quite some time. You're now really seeing, quoting David Frum, who we just talked about, a great piece he has in The Atlantic about it, Detroit. You're really seeing this axis of evil with Russia, North Korea, communist China, the most repressive communist nations on earth. And Putin would like to call himself a communist leader, but the most repressive nations on earth coming together to unite against the West, to unite against NATO, to unite against America, to unite against freedom. And I've got to say, the most frightening part of that, because standing alone doesn't cause a concern if you look at our economic might and our military might. But the most concerning part of that alliance is that Donald Trump considers himself to be close friends with every one of those tyrants.
That's the picture that we should all focus on right now. It's arguably the most important part of this unfolding political campaign is that the Republican nominee wants to be in that frame. He wants to be walking through squares like that. He, by his own admission, he admires that. He admires the authoritarianism. He admires the toughness. And I would just say to all of my friends, and your friends too, who consider themselves Reagan Republicans, look at these images and explain to me, explain to us why somehow or another it is in the American interest to support Vladimir Putin against American intelligence agencies, against American interest, against the long-standing, sometimes ambivalent, sometimes unsuccessful, sometimes contradictory, but persistent support of democracies around the world on the part of the United States. Our collective security after World War II was based on the idea that democracies tended not to go to war with each other. Autocracies tended to go to war against democracies. That is the pattern. And it doesn't necessarily predict the future, but it's a pretty good diagnostic guide. And if you want to understand the global stakes of what we're facing, those are the images to show.
You know, what's so remarkable here, John Meacham, is that you look at Donald Trump's words, and we've talked time and time again about the Peter Millar Republicans in the clubhouse, sitting there. Well, it's Republican versus Democrat, and Biden, he's a socialist. How's your 401k? Oh, making more money than ever. How's your stocks? Oh, doing breaking records every day. But he's a socialist, so I'm just going to vote for the Republican, acting as if this is Dole versus Clinton in 1996. Let's look at the words and your friends and my friends. How do they justify the fact that they're still considering voting for a guy who called President Xi, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, who asked him at Mar-a-Lago reportedly about building concentration camps for Uyghurs, and Trump offhandedly said, yeah, sure, yeah, sounds great. Who called, he praised President Xi as being incredibly powerful with an iron fist, a brilliant guy with an iron fist, and respected the fact he had an iron fist and could repress over 1 billion of his citizens. He called Vladimir Putin's invasion of Russia brilliant. Brilliant. I say that to all of your friends at the 19th hole and my friends. Then, of course, went on and on about his love letters to Kim Jong-un, a man who's considered to be the most bloodthirsty communist tyrant on the face of the globe. This is who your friends, some of your friends, some of my friends, some of your family, some of my family, and everybody on Fox News is supporting.
It's one of the great puzzles of, and I mean this. I can argue the domestic side. I understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand the taxes and judges argument for domestically supporting the Republican nominee, whoever it might be. And boy, we have now tested 3 times whoever it might be. But this one doesn't make sense to me. This is a party whose modern incarnation, most recent incarnation before the Trumpification of it, was Ronald Reagan's philosophy of the Cold War. We win, they lose. Right? It was a negotiating position from the former president of the Screen Actors Guild, who called him an evil empire and then brought Gorbachev to the table. And the Soviet Union falls on George H.W. Bush's watch, Christmas Day 1991, without a single American troop being in a forward combat position. Something unimaginable. But it was the product, yes, of a bipartisan coalition where we argued about the relative projection of force against Soviet tyranny, but we never argued about the fact of Soviet tyranny, not in a serious way. Here you have a 3-time Republican nominee for president, right? Which is only, let's see, Nixon got it 4 times. That's the record. So Donald Trump is closing in on Richard Nixon and his record for winning the Republican presidential nomination. We have a nominee who argues that Russia is a more reliable partner than his own intelligence agencies. and supports the rawest kind of aggression against neighbors, which is the tenet of the international order, right? So how does, and I'm not asking this in sort of a MSNBC hyperbolic, moment, how does a Reagan-Bush Republican support a Republican nominee who puts not America first, but Putin first? How do you justify it?
Well, and not just Jonathan O'Meara, not just Putin first over his own intel chiefs that he appointed, and of course you asked that question. But again, praises the leader of communist China as a brilliant man with an iron fist, praises the fact that he's able to repress over 1 billion of his people, that he's able to put Uyghurs, 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. Kim Jong-un, again, talking about love letters and what a remarkable relationship he has with Kim Jong-un. Again, this is, as John said, I mean, this is what moved my family, who were Cold Warriors all along, from the Democratic to the Republican Party. It's why my dad loved Reagan, well, first Nixon and then Reagan so much, because they were tough on communists. They were tough on tyrants. They were tough on dictators like Kim Jong-un, who threatens the West all the time, who threatens America all the time. Tough on people like, I mean, I could go on and on down the list, but John's, of course, exactly right. This is what held the Republican Party together for so long. That was the fact that we were all children of Reagan. We supported, we believed in Western democracy. We believed in Western freedoms and believed that there was, in fact, a battle between East and West politically and ideology. It defined Dr. Brzezinski's life. It defined Dr. Brzezinski's writings. And like Reagan, he had a very simple view, and most Republicans had this view as well. The strategy for Dr. Brzezinski, the strategy for Ronald Reagan, the strategy for Jeane Kirkpatrick, the strategy for Madeleine Albright, the strategy for Robert Gates, we win, they lose. Donald Trump has it completely reversed. He attacks democratically elected leaders in Europe who are freely elected, and he admires and praises communist tyrants.
Yeah,
and again, the point there is, again, that's who the Republican Party is lining up behind this year, like they did 4 years ago, like they did 8 years ago. And they wonder why they keep losing.
Yeah, if there's a strongman out there, Donald Trump has tried to cozy up to him. And this is not a secret. He's doing it in plain sight. Republicans know this, and yet they're voting for him anyway. Someone who would praise Putin, Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, and the rest. And we know the preservation of democracy is a core tenet for the Biden campaign. They feel like that worked in 2020, largely on domestic issues. They now feel like it's even more important in the post-January 6th world, but also internationally with what we're seeing in Ukraine, the war there, that this is Putin, an autocrat, trying to illegally seize a democracy in Ukraine. And they feel like this will matter again, that it's not something that always is picked up in the polls, that this is not an issue that, is as buzzy as, say, as inflation or other matters, or whether Joe Biden is too old. But they think that among a core group of Americans, in particular, older Americans who remember the Cold War, who care about these things, who care about standing up for democracy, that this will matter, Joe, that this is an issue that will matter come November.
All right. And still